Unity consciousness is much easier than most people realize, because in this moment there is just the awareness of the forms appearing. So there's, in the subject object mode, it would be the idea that Hale is having a conversation with David. But the reality is, from the unified mode of experience, there is just this infinite, effortless ocean of beingness and awareness. So when Hale speaks, that's like a wave arising on that infinite ocean. And then when David speaks, it's like a wave arising on that same ocean. And then all the forms are arising. So the objects in the room, or the light through the window. And so that actually never went away, that we've always remained in unity consciousness. It's just that we were conditioned into this little play version, which is individuality. But it's a kind of make-believe realm, really, because it never happened.
Welcome to Letting Go and the Greatest Secret, where we explore the end of your suffering and the beginning of lasting happiness. I'm Hale Dwoskin, and today I'm happy to welcome back again David Bingham. David was a featured teacher along with me in Rhonda Byrne's The Greatest Secret. David was an ordinary, everyday person like you and me, with one difference. After 20 years of searching, he discovered the truth while listening to a podcast like you're doing right now. David is now a teacher who has helped many realize their true nature. It's been a while since our last conversation. What's been happening for you?
Well, actually, probably the same as you, which is that things just kind of continue to develop, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you and I have that in common, that we both like to allow new things to come in and see where they take us. So
Yes.
it's much more interesting, but also the way people realize their true nature just seems to be becoming, more easy. And that's been fascinating, really, just watching that. And it seems to come effortlessly. It isn't anything, there's no planning in that. It's just there's a kind of sequence of events, and somebody says something, and it just develops from there, really.
Yes. Yes. Well, again, what I notice happens is, well, actually, one of the big changes on this end is that there's no longer a sense of trying to help people find their true nature, because it's the true nature of what is has nothing to do with the sense of me.
Absolutely, yeah. Yes,
So me never finds its true nature.
exactly.
Me is the true illusion. I mean, this world is both real and unreal,
Mm-hmm.
but what is completely unreal is the sense of me. It's made up, it's learned.
Yes.
Children, babies don't come in with it, and we don't go out with it.
No, no.
So, so there's no longer, there is still a pointing, a transitional piece that I've noticed is that sometimes people need to first see that they aren't their thoughts, their feelings, their ideas about themselves, their stories.
Yes.
And that recognition can feel like an awakening. For most people,
Yes.
it is. It's a
Yes.
profound awakening. And then the next sense that sometimes comes for many people is that they are the awareness, or that is aware of these things.
Yes.
And that is the sense of witnessing. And a lot of people stop there because that's actually fantastic compared to the way most people live, because most people are being dragged behind the bus.
Yes.
And they think it's happening to them, so it makes it even
Yes.
more extreme. So,
Yes.
but as that sense of me drops away, so does the sense of witnessing. That
Yes.
too
Yes.
is an illusion.
Mm.
And so
Mm.
uh, uh, they're the same thing. So what have
Yes.
you noticed?
It's very interesting you mentioned that point, because one of the key things really has been to do with the distinction between impersonal being and the personal mode of experience, because the personal mode of experience is the way we're conditioned. And that conditioning starts at birth, really. It depends on the early years, but we tend to take possession of things like the body, mind, and the thoughts and the emotions. But I like to use the koshas as a way of showing the different modes of experience available, because really the first two koshas, so the body
Can I
of
pause you
bliss and
there for a second? I'm very
yeah,
familiar with what
certainly.
the koshas are, but for those people who aren't aware of it, can you
Yes,
just pause for a moment and explain to people what you're talking about, and
yes,
then go into the explanation?
absolutely,
Uh,
absolutely. That's a good
we
point.
both are versed in both Eastern and Western traditions, so
Yes.
I know what that is.
That's
But I want to
great,
make sure
certainly.
everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, really, we all begin and remain as attributeless beings. So, in Indian terms, it's really just awareness aware of itself, one could say, or they use three terms in India, which are Rishi, Devata, and Chandas. So Rishi is the knower, Devata is the means of knowing, and Chandas is the known. So every experience we have is always actually just Rishi, Devata, and Chandas, either directly, so it's just awareness aware of itself. So in attributeless awareness, the knower is awareness, the means of knowing is awareness, and what is known is awareness. But then we venture into the kind of phenomenal realm, and the first filter or kosher or sheath is called the body of bliss. And so the only amendment really is that the chandas value changes. So rather than it just being awareness aware of itself, it's awareness aware of infinite bliss. So that is an impersonal field of bliss, which we can, that's something which can become familiar, and something we can experience for long periods of time. And then the next amendment, or the next filter, is called the body of wisdom, which is also effortless being. So we actually begin experience in the human realm through the body of wisdom primarily. It alternates between the body of wisdom and the body of bliss. So the body of wisdom is really where all forms appear equally and effortlessly. So using Rishi, Devata, and Chanda. So Rishi is the knower. So it's, it could be awareness is Rishi. Awareness is Devata, and Chandas is all forms arising equally and effortlessly. And actually, that that mode of experience never goes away. In this moment, there is still actually only effortless awareness of all forms appearing. So as you and I know, there's just the effortless noticing of the forms appearing. So there's awareness of the body sitting on the seat. There's awareness of two voices in conversation, of the light coming through the window. Whatever the forms are arising in any moment, they're just arising effortlessly, and there's no analysis, there's no comparison, no judgment, and that really is totally effortless, and there's no energetic expenditure involved in that. So we can actually begin to notice the distinction between effortless impersonal being, because impersonal being and functioning from effortless being is an infinite field. So it's actually an infinite impersonal field, and you could say the body of bliss is also an infinite impersonal field. But the three remaining koshas, which are the mental body, the emotional or etheric body, and the physical body, there's much more limitation applying to those. And there is also the element of personalization. So there's a kind of dividing line between the body of wisdom, which is effortless being, and the body of bliss. They're on the one side, they remain in alignment with unity. And then the dividing line of duality is where the mental, emotional, and physical realms emerge. So really, I've just been using those traditional structures to probably deliver a very similar message to the one you're delivering, which is that we never became the individual. We never became, the personal mode. The personal mode of experience is available, but unity consciousness is much easier than most people realize, because in this moment there is just the awareness of the forms appearing. So there's, in the subject-object mode, it would be the idea that Hale is having a conversation with David. But the reality is, from the unified mode of experience, there is just this infinite, effortless ocean of beingness and awareness. So when Hale speaks, that's like a wave arising on that infinite ocean. And then when David speaks, it's like a wave arising on that same ocean. And then all the forms are arising. So the objects in the room, or the light through the window. And so that actually never went away, that we've always remained in unity consciousness. It's just that we were conditioned into this little sort of play version, which is individuality. But it's a kind of make-believe realm, really, because it never happened.
Totally make-believe. but apparently real. In other words,
yes,
a big trap that I find many people who are interested in the type of things we both talk about fall into is that they hear things like this and then they think, well, it's my life is make believe, so it doesn't really matter. I don't need to take care of the body. I don't need to work. I'll just sit on my couch and wait for life to take care of me. Okay, take care of me. And that's just a distortion, or it's just part of the dream. So yes. I like to caution people about that. But the same thing, the other thing is, I love your description. But does this infinite ocean that all is, that appears as the wave of David or Hale or all the people listening, or the computer screen or device, and the floor, the ceiling, does that require an awareness of it, or is the awareness just another function of the infinite ocean?
Yeah, well, it is actually, because the infinite ocean of beingness, or whatever label we use, is a field of infinite possibilities. So there can be all kinds of amendments in terms of the way it's experienced. So there can be the unified version, which is the one you explain, where awareness is also, as you say, just that's a sort of optional experience. And I think the thing to know, because it's a field of infinite possibilities, there is no right or wrong, really.
Absolutely.
It's only whether that's the way people wish to experience it. And yes. In Neo-Advaita, for instance, people sometimes say, well, everything's just happening and there's nothing that we can do. And right. That's actually true of the body of wisdom, or the effortless being, because all forms are rising equally and effortlessly there. But then the personal realm of experience, there do appear to be different opportunities and different modes of experience available. And it's really just my feeling is, when there's alignment with the mind wants to know, and it pretends that it knows. But every thought, as Lester always used to say, every thought is a limitation.
Yes.
So you realize that just having this sense of openness, what I really like is when we align with unity, or where, where there is functioning from the infinite impersonal ocean of being, then you see that we're not in service to individuality anymore. We're actually just effortlessly available to the infinite being, and the infinite being seems to reveal things in a kind of sequence. And that's the thing I really enjoy, because it's like it turns life into an adventure which is just completely unknown. You never know where it's going to take you, but it's just knowing that there's this intelligence which is guiding things, and being available to be in service to that. But it's very benign as well. I feel the difference between the mind and the dualistic realm is the structures operating in the dualistic realm, so the ones that run everything in this world, they're quite severe in a way. It's all to do with hard work and achieving things in time and competing with everyone, and all kinds of arduous experiences. Whereas the intelligence coming from the infinite being is just it's a combination of infinite intelligence and infinite love. So it handles things in a way which is just it's just the most delightful experience, really. And I've just noticed, for instance, the way certain things happen in life. I have lots of one-to-one conversations with people, and recently there was a change in my personal circumstances. I moved in to look after my mum because she's getting old.
Yes.
And there's a kind of flow in terms of the number of inquiries for conversations and things, and it always seems to work out, so that people who are interested, I tend to be able to have a conversation with them. But for the couple of months that I was moving, they all kind of fell away. So there were no requests at all. And then when I was settled again, then it all started. So and I've seen that before, where it's like this wave, and it's just happening independently. There's nothing on a personal level, but there's just this there's obviously this intelligence which is just guiding the whole process, and it brings, not only does it kind of regulate the volume of inquiries and match that with the time available, but it also is able to kind of select and match people where there's a real feeling of resonance. And there's almost everyone I have a conversation with, and I feel this with you as well, that it's as though you've always known them. It's just like this. It's just like being able to speak with an old friend, really, and it always seems like that.
Yes, there is unconditional love for sure.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
Well, Wesley used to talk a lot about have whatever you. The idea was not to accumulate, but to have whatever you need as you need it. But what is often misinterpreted about that is that people think that I need to have whatever I need as I need it. But a better way of describing that is life is taking care of itself. And whatever's required for that is always this, whatever's apparently happening.
Yes.
This is what's required at the moment because it's happening.
Yes.
Now, that doesn't mean that there might not be a motivation to take action to change something in the body-mind world, but that motivation is not personal.
No.
It's just
no, exactly.
And the thoughts, even the most contracted thoughts, aren't personal either. They're just simply what's arising.
Hmm.
But at the same time, things like, hey, I want to have a conversation with David, or I want to come to a Sedona method course. That's impersonal too. It's
Yes.
not like anyone is doing any of that. It's
No.
just what's happening. And there is this harmony that, as you just described, that is always there, even when it seems it's weird. Right now, I have two computer screens on my desk. You can't see them because the camera's facing away from the computer screens, but I'm in computer. I have two computers next to me, and one is older, and I could tell it was getting the end of its life cycle. So I'm in the middle of resetting up a new computer, which has taken a lot more time than this body mind expected. And
Yes.
it hasn't been always smooth. But at the same time, as there's been this working through it, all these other things have gotten improved because of it.
Yes.
When it's finally done, the computer is going to be, not only will it be a faster, newer computer that will last hopefully a long time, but it will have all sorts of things in it that I wouldn't even have imagined doing if it was smooth.
Yes.
And we had antiviral software that I've been paying for 10 years that wasn't really set up right, that I
Wow.
didn't know.
No.
And
No.
and so I talked to the company, and they gave us the latest version of that software, and the original license that I've been paying for all this time was for a single user. Now the same plan is for multiple users. So now the antiviral software is on all my wife and my digital devices. So things like that
Fantastic.
happen
Yes.
out
Yeah.
of
Yes.
even things that seem to be a problem,
Yes.
because it only
Yes.
seems to be a problem from the lower three
For,
koshas.
yes.
That's
Yes.
the only
Certainly.
place to
Yes.
use your terminology. That's the only place that problems seem to appear. That's also the
Yes.
only place that solutions appear, because
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
but we're speaking for a general audience.
Yes. Well, since we last spoke, it's been quite interesting, really, in terms of people realizing their true nature, because for years, well, since 2008, I've been having one-to-one conversations. So I've spoken with thousands of people, but in the past couple of years, it's kind of developed in a slightly different way, which is that a lady I spoke to quite a few months ago now, called Colette Whiteman. She asked me if there were any recordings of conversations where people realized their true nature during the conversation. And there are actually lots of them, but because the recording is the property of the person I have the conversation with, and it's recorded onto their computer, then I didn't have access to them. But when Colette mentioned that, I thought, well, from now, I'm going to ask one or two people if they would mind. And so a few of those have been posted on my YouTube channel. And there are actually more people realizing their true nature from watching the videos now than from having conversations, which
Right.
is amazing, really. It's just so I really like that. Anything that works in that direction, where it's because that's the general direction I've noticed, just that the means of teaching and the the way the self reveals itself to itself is becoming easier and easier, really.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the things which becomes apparent. And I think just being available rather than holding on to any concepts of the way it should be, that can just happen on its own, really.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. It does happen on its own.
Yeah, yes.
Not only can it, it does.
It does, it does.
That's the biggest joke, that everything is already happening on its own.
Yes. Yeah.
It's just that the sense of me, which is also happening on its own. It's not like
Yes.
young children, as they get older, take on this limitation consciously. They don't wake up one morning and say, I think I want to be limited, so I'm going to believe I'm a separate individual. Mommy's over
Yeah.
there and I'm over here. That's not exactly what happens. It's all
No.
spontaneous. So even that sense that those of us who are on the spiritual path, spend so much time trying to be free of this imaginary separate individual,
Hmm.
that's happening spontaneously, as is the arising of the separate individual and its
Yes.
setting as well.
Yes. Yeah. I think, when we're really young, and I remember this actually, how we, I guess because my parents were just very kind and there was no stress really for the first few years of life. It was just pretty effortless. And so there's clear awareness of actually existing as an infinite field of bliss in the early part of life, and then also existing just as this infinite field within which all forms arise equally and effortlessly.
Yes.
And I do remember the kind of invitation into the dualistic realm, which is, it's delivered by our parents really, and then it's later reinforced in the education system. But the way it tends to happen, this is my memory of it, is that we're just existing as this open space of awareness within which all the forms are appearing, all of the physical forms, the thought forms, the emotional forms. And then gradually our parents start referring to the body mind by name, and then they kind of noticing certain attributes and likes and dislikes. So every interaction we have, they're kind of inviting us into the dualistic realm. And initially, and I remember this feeling distinctly, there was the knowing that we are just resting as this infinite, effortless, impersonal field of awareness, or whatever term you want to use,
Right. The
beingness.
terms don't matter.
There was this distinct invitation into identification with the body. So they're calling us by name, and to begin with, it just seems like a funny little game. They're saying, well, they're referring to you as David. And I remember the feeling of the body mind being an object which is present within the three-dimensional realm. So there's, you see the table, you see the chair, you see the view through the window, and there's this body mind parked up, either on the seat or on the carpet or somewhere. And then you realize you have access to it. But it's a kind of interface between our infinite potential in this specific kind of dualistic realm of experience.
Yes, yes.
But I remember there was a kind of conceding to that invitation, where the parents were saying, oh, this is David, and oh, this is his brother, and he likes to do this, and then it's like a bombardment when they're just, every time they're speaking, they're kind of inviting us into the dualistic realm of experience and constructing this character. It's like inventing a character in a play, really. And
Yes,
then at some
yes, it's
point,
very much like that. Yes.
because the infinite being really is like the most versatile actor, who can play any role. And
Well,
then
is playing
he's
every
playing
role.
all the role, every role. Yeah, absolutely.
Without feeling like an actor or a role player.
Exactly. And it's comical really, because you just sense that those invitations are being delivered. And I've mentioned this before, but quite recently, one of my cousins said to me, "Well, we always thought there was something wrong with you, David, because your speech was really slow and you didn't really engage very much with anyone." But I remember that it was just it took a lot of effort to actually move into interaction in the dualistic realm of experience, and it
Yes.
wasn't a particularly desirable experience for me. And so
Right.
it took a long time, even, well, it just went on for several years, really. But I remember kind of conceding in a way, where the invitation, where you're being described as this person existing in time and space, you think, well, they seem to be enjoying this game. I'll go along with it, and I'll pretend I am as well. But then when you go to school, and your name's called on the register, and you have your peg with your name on it to put your coat on, all these things, and then all the comparisons as well. They tend to really intensify the dualistic realm. But yeah, it's a relief to know it never happened.
Right. Yeah. Well, there can be a memory of a story about what the body mind went through,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
that's just an appearance.
Yes.
The that infinite beingness or isness
Yeah.
has never done anything.
No.
It is everything and nothing. So that includes everything and nothing.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
but
it is always
it is such a relief.
simultaneously.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. It's quite interesting though, because I quite like to play, with the different modes, because I find that it's more enjoyable in a way, knowing what you just described, which is there is just, it is just everything and nothing. It can, it can't, we never actually move from our infinite nature into the character, but we can assume that role, and it depends on the circumstances, and so sometimes with what I've noticed in conversations with people is where there is the functioning from unity, so it's actually maintaining the knowing of oneself as these are just words really, but knowing oneself as this infinite field within which all forms appear.
Yes.
And then you notice whatever is before you, they're also like waves on this ocean. Then the perception changes, and I think that has some kind of influence in some way. And there's the opportunity to move between the dualistic mode. For instance, I don't know whether you have this experience, but people you've known for a long time, friends or family members, they have an image of you,
Oh, yes.
Which is from the time that they enjoyed the relationship with you most of all, I guess. And so,
or hated most of all.
oh yes,
A lot of people can relate to that. I mean,
yes, that's another angle, isn't it? Yeah. But I quite like that really, because sometimes I've a very dear friend who I've known since I was really young, and it's quite interesting. He hasn't really had any challenges, and so his life's gone on. It's been a very kind of conventional life in a way. He had a family, and he's had regular, his career has just sort of worked right the way through. There have been no periods of unemployment, no challenges as yet either. His parents are both still alive, so there haven't been any real challenges. But it's quite interesting that when we meet, it's the same as we used to be when we were sort of 15 or 16, when we spent a lot of time together, because
yes.
that mode is still there. And you can only really just we each have these different, even with the life of an individual, we each have these different roles depending on who we're with.
Oh, yes, and they can be very different.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're certainly repeating from the perspective of the person. There are repeating patterns.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
and again, those are just waves, as we've been saying. I
Mm.
love that
Mm.
analogy that it's all just waves in the
Mm.
infinite ocean of being.
Mm.
But the suffering comes in when there's an identification with a particular wave. It
Mm.
could be a particular wave that's happening within the body mind as a
Yes.
pattern of behavior, a pattern of thinking, a pattern of feeling, or just the overarching identification with the wave of that bears your name. That's called
Yes.
Hale or David or
Mm.
whatever that is. Those uh, those waves just come and go, and
Yes.
when they're owned, the wave then becomes a problem.
Yes.
When they're not owned,
Yes.
I mean, it's no one would sit on the beach and say, "This next wave is mine. I'm going to keep it."
No. No.
Because you're sitting on the beach. And one thing that's really obvious is that wave only has a limited time frame. And
Yes.
and it just goes back into ocean by the time it hits
Yes.
the shore.
Yeah.
But that's what, as long as there's identification, that's what most of us are doing. We're going, no, no,
Yes.
no, that's my wave.
Yes. Yeah.
So I need to
Yeah.
keep it going.
Yes. Well, you can see there's a kind of sequence in a way, because when um, we can, the opportunity for everyone in this moment is just to function as the ocean rather than as the wave. And that really is just by noticing that all forms arise equally and effortlessly, and they're just and they're just arising within an infinite field, and that there are no boundaries really. The boundaries which appear to be there, like the boundary of the body or the boundary of the mind or the emotions, they're just they're options for limitation really. But you can see that there is a sequence, because the sequence of the koshas, the way I relate them, is in reverse to the way they're described in kind of traditional ways, because mostly the starting point is the first kosha is described as the physical body, and then the emotional, and then the mental body, and then the body of wisdom and the body of bliss. But it's clear that it's actually the opposite way around, because the manifestation process takes place from subtle to gross. So from attributeless being, the first amendment really is just the amendment into infinite bliss, and then the amendment into the body of wisdom, where unity still remains, but rather than it being attributeless, it's where all the forms can appear. But then the personalized realm, the invitation into that comes with the mind really. So there can be the personalization. And then you notice that there's a kind of sequence of consent in a way, because if we first assume identification with the mind, then the mind is in the realm of duality. And it's quite simple in a way. I think the way we venture into the dualistic realm is, or into the mental realm, is firstly through probably comparison, because if you take two beautiful objects, or two beautiful flowers, or two beautiful anything really, there can be an enhancement through the comparison. But then we don't realize what we ventured into, because the comparison is quite innocent. There's just the one enhances the other. But then there can be a sort of preference which comes in, where there's a preference for the one over the other. And then there could be, someone else could say, well, I like that one, and you say, well, I like this one, and then it's conflict. So in like three easy steps, you can go just from unity.
That could be a course,
unity to
conflict in
preference.
3 easy steps. I interrupted. Please finish that thought.
No.
That just came through.
Well, it is really, and you can just see it. You can see it how, but initially, there is just unity consciousness. There's just all forms arising equally and effortlessly, and then there is just the element of preference where we well, actually, the comparison really is the first one. So we just compare one thing to another, which is enhancing, and it actually enhances comparison. Could enhance the experience of both, because you can enjoy both forms completely wholeheartedly, but then you can make the comparison between them, and you can see, you can appreciate what they each have to offer. But then when preference comes in, that's really the problematic one, because preference comes in, and then that can that can result in conflict, because somebody might like the other one.
Yes, yes.
But that's the sequence. But it's quite even I mean, it's tragicomic in a way, in the way you see the way the dualistic world works, because you would think that the wise people in this world, the leaders, would be maintaining unity and they wouldn't be having preferences. But because they're so highly invested in the dualistic realm, but you can see how it can go in those 3 easy steps, into, well, the most extreme form of conflict, really.
Yeah, war.
Yeah.
And again, as long as there's this sense that, again, I'm here and everything else is there, which is what you've been talking about.
Mm.
There is that brings with it, it's innocent, because if I think I exist here, then anything else out there becomes a threat.
Yes.
And the best way to eliminate a threat is, and the best way to protect yourself from a threat is to eliminate it. It's just the logical conclusion. If you think you're confined to this body mind, then you're competing with all other body minds for resources. You're trying to get everyone you meet. It's a transaction. It's a transactional. It becomes transactional. They're either a friend or a foe.
Yes.
Friends, unfortunately, it's just someone you think you can get something from. And foe is someone you need to keep at a distance, because they're going to take something from you, including possibly your life.
Yes.
But all of that is imagined, because even preference doesn't become a problem until it belongs to someone.
Yes.
Right? Because if we compared our preferences, like you have a preference for living in the UK. You're in the UK still, aren't you?
Yes. Yes.
And there's a preference here for living in the United States. But so what?
Yes. Yes, it's not going to cause a problem, really.
No. I'm not starting a war over, or a religion. Religion, people have preferences for a particular type of religion. There's nothing wrong with that. I know, especially since our religious upbringing is upbringing, it's programming, it's what we've been trained to believe in.
Yes.
And the trained beliefs that we live in are, well, first off, we don't live in them, but we think we live in. I've spent so many decades talking to people as though they're real, that I'll slip back into that. And that's okay, because that's needed to as a bridge to communicate about the possibility that this is already wholeness. This is already freedom, as you've been putting it. This is already the infinite beingness. But actually, the thing we were touched on earlier, nothing's really actually happening. This is just a dance of being. And it's an exquisite dance. And unfortunately, in the human experience, it comes with conflict.
Yes.
And conflict can be a real bear to
Mm.
experience.
Mm.
And yet it too is part of the infinite dance. It's no one really, I was about to say something that I don't know if it's true. Some people consciously create conflict.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's happening from a place of thinking that's what's going to bring them wholeness,
Yes.
the conflict.
Mm.
But if anything we think we create as a person automatically brings conflict, because
Mm.
I have to
Mm.
protect it because it's now mine. Whatever it
Yes.
is, it could be
Yeah.
a possession, a point of view, an
Mm.
idea. It doesn't matter.
Mm.
But even that is just a spontaneous arising
Mm.
or a
Mm.
spontaneous wave in the
Mm.
one beingness that all
Mm.
is.
Mm.
And so, yes, there's a back and forth that is experienced, but
Mm. Yeah, it's fascinating, really, just the way we're playing this game of, and it's a kind of disguise, and something which has become quite prominent in the dialogues I have is that there is there's an energetic component involved in human experience, which when we understand how it works, it's possible to eliminate that. So it's really to do with identification, I guess, but the knowing that the body mind isn't who we are, um, the the frequencies of experience we have, so there could be predominant frequencies of limitation in terms of, say, the emotions or the thinking patterns,
yes,
and it's always only our own energy which is charging those. But seeing that we're just remaining in our infinite nature, then the identification with the delivery of those, and which they're really just tendencies, but the delivery of those tendencies is something which, through habit, we tend to take delivery of them, but it's only ever our own energy that's being compromised, which is why, in an emotional sense, we feel depleted if we entertain those kind of things, which is, extreme forms of limitation. But I I think the simplicity of just functioning from our infinite effortless nature is the solution to that, because the sequence of personalization and then taking possession, as you were saying about kind of taking ownership of things, that sequence doesn't take place anymore, because we're just remaining functioning from our infinite nature. And then you realize that there's a kind of guidance system, in terms of the material or the content coming from our infinite nature, which has a different quality, because the one is really expansive, and the other one has a sense of contraction.
yes.
And you just see that the way we experience can certainly be refined, and that's something which just kind of comes effortlessly, really.
Yes. Yes, exactly. There is a refining. Again,
Mm.
we're not refining it, but there is a
No.
refining.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
It definitely is.
Yeah.
And the beauty of this is, wherever any particular person appears to be, that's still just that one wave.
Mm.
It's so,
Mm.
even if you or someone you know seems to be going through tremendous drama or trauma, and
Mm.
they're really lost in it, they think they
Mm.
are it, it's happening to
Mm.
them, they're the victims, they're
Mm.
being dragged behind the bus, there can be a tremendous compassion in that, knowing that's just how it appears to them,
Mm.
but there really is no difference, between someone, between that one infinite beingness and in its form of a person lost in a drama and a trauma. That's still just infinite beingness.
Yes.
And there's a relaxation that happens when there's a resonance, an openness that happens when there's a resonance, and it's just natural and spontaneous. It doesn't require anyone doing anything. Action happens, but no one's actually doing anything.
Yeah.
No one actually ever has.
No. And it's nice to get to the point of recognition of that, really, and to see that it's always been fully present, because that's exactly the way it is. And as you started the conversation, it's really the distinction between impersonal being and the personal realm of experience, because all the problematic content is in the mental, emotional, and physical realms. And it's a relief to know we never actually went there. That we
right. Yeah. Well, it's a relief to recognize that all those boundaries were created in the mental realm.
Yes.
The boundary between the koshas, the infinite wisdom, the infinite beingness, the infinite bliss, and the infinite mind, the infinite emotion, and the infinite physical is just the same infinity.
Yes.
Boundlessly. There's no real borderline between any of them.
No.
In fact, if you try to find one, you can't.
No.
Because there isn't any.
No. No.
There's just this. So we covered a lot of territory.
We have, yeah. It's good just to have a conversation and just catch up, really, because you see that really everything that's happened since the previous conversations is it's all happened by itself, really. There's been no doer involved.
Yes.
But that's when it's most fun, because the mind wants to run the show, and it wants to say, oh, I did this and I take credit for this. But it's much more fun when it's far more childlike, really, where we're just able to allow, it's just happening by itself anyway. It isn't that we're even allowing it. There's no option for it.
Right. Allowing isn't optional.
No.
Well, it's not even happening. There's no one to allow.
No.
That's great.
But it's certainly much more. It's a lot of fun when that's recognized, really, when there's just the seeing that it's just naturally and effortlessly unfolding.
Yes, absolutely. So the last time we had a conversation, there weren't too many places for people to find you. It sounds like that's changed. So how do people reach you?
Well, probably the most effective way is through my YouTube channel, because there's quite a lot of content there and lots of interviews and conversations with people. So that's just David Bingham channel on YouTube. There's a website as well, which has been in existence for years, which is just nonconceptualawareness.com. And recently a book has emerged effortlessly as well. It's actually called Effortless Being, and it was I had some help in putting it together with a lady called Jessica Wood, who's a professional writer, and that's available on Amazon. And that we put it together as a kind of guidebook, really, because it just it just addresses lots of the common questions that people have. And for people, so I think it's only about 67 pages long, but it's quite a good starting point for people who are just beginning to, inquire into the nature of their true self.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks. It is. I always enjoy conversations with you, Hale. It's fantastic.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation with David Bingham. To learn more about David, visit his website at nonconceptualawareness.com. That's nonconceptualawareness.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe so you have immediate access to future episodes. Please give us a 5-star rating and share it with the people you care about. If you'd like to learn more about my work, my mentor, Lester Levinson's work, and the Sedona method, please visit www.sedona.com. As you explore our site, you'll learn the key to lasting happiness, success, peace, and emotional well-being. We have books, courses, events, and plenty of free material to explore. Again, go to sedona.com. That's sedona.com. Thank you for being here, and we'll catch you in the next episode of Letting Go and the Greatest Secret.